first of all, I want to say thank y'all for having me today. It's always a pleasure to kind of get the word out about our department and some of the things that we do. I've been told by my boss, do not go past 1 o'clock or I'll have rotten tomatoes thrown at me. So I'll try to rush through this. There's a lot of information here, but anyway, my goal is to get done about 10 minutes early, and then that'll leave room for some questions. So let's get started. Obviously, you already know who I am. I'll skip this one. My hobbies, I do like to go to the lake and I like to play golf. Other than that, it's just a lot of work and chasing my kids. I'm almost an empty nester now, so I don't really chase the kids that much anymore. I always like this slide here. This is one of the original seals of the Greenville Fire Department. Greenville, the fire department as well, the city's got a lot of history, but the fire department's got a lot of history. And the fire department was started in 1883. When I first came to work here as a firefighter, I really didn't appreciate that. And when you get a little bit older and you get a little more vested, when you look back on some of the history, you kind of get a hunger for it. So I don't know how many of you know that the fire department was started. There was a hotel fire downtown that actually several people were killed in that fire. Before that, there wasn't a fire department. And so once they had that fire, they realized they needed to establish their own fire department. Once again established in 1883, it was an all-volunteer department. They had 3 stations. Then they weren't numbered. They weren't 1, 2, 3, and 4 like they are now. They called them Central, South Hill, and West Hill. And the original fire chief's name was Guy Wise. We're so fortunate, and I know a lot of you have seen the pictures downtown. When I first did kind of put this together, those weren't up on the buildings, but we've got a lot of pictures of the original fire equipment. And I don't know how well you can see that up here, but I know the pictures that are up on some of the windows downtown are really nice. They've been digitally redone, and they look amazing. This right here is a horse-drawn hose wagon. So back then, you had a separate pumper, you had a separate hose wagon, and you had a separate ladder. Well, now all that stuff is on one apparatus for us. Back then, we didn't really have fire hydrants like we do today. We didn't have the infrastructure in place where we have water mains throughout the city. So our water was centrally located around the courthouse during that period. So if we wanted to hook up to water, we would have to have an extremely long hose lay, which is why we had the long hose in the wagon. Those were up to 500-600 feet long. Luckily, we weren't quite as spread out during that day as we are today. Here's a wonderful picture of our first fire steam engine. Back then, the fire engines were driven by steam. I would give just about anything if I still had that, if we still had that available. There's several. If you've ever seen one in person, they're mainly made of brass, and they're some of the most beautiful pieces you'll ever see when they're fully restored. Here's a good picture of our original station, along with, starting from the far right, we've got the steam engine, the hose wagon, and then you can see the ladder wagons as you kind of move your way to the left. But that's an equipment lineup. We're back in the 1800s. During the early 1900s, we start to see quite a bit of change in the fire department. We become fully paid, and starting in 1916, we actually have motorized fire apparatus. So we're getting away from the horse-drawn equipment and getting into motorized apparatus. And as most of you have seen, we're extremely lucky to actually have the 1916 American LaFrance fire engine that was first purchased. We actually still have that apparatus in our possession today. And I'll show you some more about that later. At that time, our personnel, they worked 11 days on and they had 1 day off. That's quite a bit different than what we do today, thank goodness, which is why I'm still married, but I don't think Renee would like that too much.
24-hour days?
No, they weren't, but they were required to be available. So, they weren't always at the station, but they were required to be in the area and be available during those days. I guess that day off was a day for them to kind of get away and decompress. So, one thing that I regret when I talk to people, I don't have a lot of information from people that were obviously around during that time or even had direct contact with people. So most of the firemen, ex-firemen that I've talked to are retired firemen. They were from the 50s up until today. And so you kind of lose a lot of information not having those people around. Here's a wonderful picture of our current municipal building and the apparatus that were bought in 1916 and 1917. From left to right are the 3 American France pumpers. We've got a booster truck second to the end. On the very end is the chief's car. Is that me? That feedback?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, all right, sorry. Here's a picture of our current 1916 that we still have. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. There's just not a ton of these around the country still in use or even available. And so once again, somebody a long time ago had enough foresight to save this and realize that down the road it would be a treasured piece. And I'm certainly grateful that they did.
Does it run?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit. That's part of the reason why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about the department and kind of how we do things, but I'm also I'm on a fundraiser mission. It's a pet project of mine to preserve that apparatus and another one we have. So, in the mid-1900s, we saw another big change. We increased our firefighters, the staffing levels. The central station was built. That central station was the municipal building. We were in the municipal building at that time, which was what the picture you just saw. That's what that was. We went to a 24 on, 24 off shift schedule, which is very familiar to me. That's kind of what we do now. We have 24 on now and 48 off. And so it's not that far removed. And also another big step that we had during that time, we had our first communication systems in the apparatus. So before that, you would have a signal box, and once you left the station, you really didn't have a means to communicate back to City Hall. But starting in 1948, we started to get those systems in place where we could have the two-way conversation. Here's another picture of a booster truck. Anybody want to guess where that was taken? Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, that was in front of Crawford, what is now Crawford and Smith, and they're replacing a tire on one of our booster trucks. This is another picture in front of the municipal building. This is a 1948 fire engine. I'm going to talk more about this particular engine here in just a little bit. This is one of our rescue nets. Has anybody ever seen these before? You don't see them much anymore. We don't use them anymore, obviously, but used to, they were recommended up to 3 stories. Somebody could jump out of a window and they could jump on these nets, and really they proved to be very ineffective, and not only injuring the firefighters, but a lot of times further injuring the people instead of taking a little bit more time and laddering the building. You know, this was supposed to be a little bit quicker means, but thankfully somebody got enough sense to quit using those. But they're really neat antique pieces, and so I'll show you. This is what we've done with ours. We had 2 left that were stored, and we painted this one, and it's in our new Fire Station 1. It's off of Gordon Street down there. The guys our guys did that. They did a wonderful job painting that, and I like to show that off because it's so pretty. And if you ever get a chance to go by that station, you won't miss it. It's a pretty piece. This is an example of a fire that was downtown. I like to tell everybody, look, it looks like a big bowl of spaghetti with all the fire hose down on the bottom. So, you know, once again, back then they didn't have the infrastructure, and so you had to lay a lot more fire lines than you do today. Now we have larger diameter lines. They're 5 inches in diameter, so we don't have to create quite that mess that we used to. Starting in the late 1900s, the city of Greenville took over the EMS, so they started running ambulance services during that time. We went to the current schedule of 24 on, 48 off, and at one point we had 79 personnel, and that's when we ran the ambulance service for the city. As you can see in the bottom, during 1990, the city turned over the ambulance service to a private organization. Just another picture of an apparatus. I put this in there because this was, when I first went to work here, this was the first piece of equipment that I rode on. So this was a picture of the Cadillac building when they had a fire on top of it. It used to be a big dance floor up there, a big wooden floor that caught on fire. It looks a lot worse than it actually was, but it made for some really good pictures I love the picture of I guess the silhouette of the firefighter up top with the fire in the background. That's pretty impressive looking. I don't know how many of you were around for the Welders Mart fire. That was quite the time with acetylene bottles and oxygen bottles. They would cook off, for lack of a better word, and shoot hundreds of feet in the air. And you know, you're looking up, going, "Man, I hope that doesn't land on me when it comes back down." But you just kind of went about your business. So, 2000 to present. Let's talk a little bit about how our operations look. So we have fire administration, and fire administration basically is where the checks are written and things are ordered. The direction of the fire department, that's where it's developed. Fire operation, those are the guys you see out in the community every day. And those are the guys that respond to the calls. Our fire prevention program is the fire marshal. You'll see him out as well. He's the one that comes and does a lot of the inspections. But he's also over a lot of our safety programs. And over the last probably 10 years, a lot of our department activities are based on prevention. We want to prevent accidents. We want to prevent fires. And so we focus just as much time on that type of material as we do training our guys for the actual event itself. Our special operations, those guys are specially trained in a lot of our different rescues, hazmat, and also like we talked about earlier when I was introduced, we are in charge of emergency management for the city. And emergency management for the city is just making sure that we're as prepared as we can be for just about any type of emergency that's going to come to the city. And kind of the method there is we try to identify what is the likelihood of an event happening here. And so for us, winter storms, severe weather, we've got a major rail line that runs right through the middle of town, and we've got a major interstate that runs through town. And so we try to identify those hazards and as best we can be able to respond to those. And that's tough for a lot of those, but I feel like we do a pretty good job there. So I'm not going to go through all these bullet points, but as the fire chief, my main job is to be the vision for the department and then give that direction to those below me. Look, this is where I think we need to go, and this is what I need for y'all to do for me. The deputy chief's job is mainly to be over operations. So I give the vision, he takes that vision and then figures out how we're going to plug it into our operations side and how we're going to function from there. Our fire safety education coordinator, Sylvia Rodriguez, Sylvia Rodriguez Peace, actually. I don't know how many of you have had the pleasure of being in contact with Sylvia and working with Sylvia, but she's one of the most amazing individuals I've ever worked with. She has a true passion for the safety of the citizens of Greenville, and not just from a fire standpoint, but really from a much broader standpoint. And some of the projects that she does, it involves the elderly, going out to their homes and identifying some of the safety hazards, fall hazards, trip hazards in their homes. She does a ton of that work. We're fixing to do a program that it's a community-wide risk analysis. We actually were awarded a grant yesterday from the National Fire Association, and they're going to help us financially and with resources to reach out to our community in a more methodical and in-depth way to identify a lot of the hazards that we have out there, especially with at-risk people. And so real excited about that. That's kind of a whole presentation by itself, but I'm excited we got that grant. I look forward to letting everybody know a lot more about that later. She coordinates our Fire Explorer program. She coordinates our Citizens Fire Academy. Another thing that I had her head up a few years ago that was extremely important for me was I wanted as best we could to make sure that we had smoke detectors in every house in the city of Greenville. There's actually no reason in the world that every person shouldn't have adequate smoke detectors in their house. It's the most basic thing in the world you can do to mainly protect you while you're asleep, you and your family while you're asleep. And so we were lucky enough to find a program through the Red Cross. And so basically now anyone that wants a smoke detector just needs to call our office, we will come out and do a survey. They can just say, hey, I want 2 smoke detectors. But what we always do is offer a free survey where we will come out and go to your home. We will see how many rooms you have, how many people live in that house. And what we will do is offer a recommendation of how many smoke detectors you need. And on top of that, our personnel, once we get all that information, our personnel will come out and install those. So we'll come out in the fire truck and we'll install those smoke detectors at absolutely no charge whatsoever. So couldn't be more proud of that program that Sylvia heads up for us. So like we talked about earlier, our fire operations is made up of, that's the guys you see out every day. We've got, we work a 24 on, 48-hour shift. We have 3 shifts, an A, B, and a C shift. So if I work on A shift, I'm going to work every 3rd day. So it's a real easy schedule to keep up with. On that shift, we've got 1 battalion chief. He's in charge of all the personnel that are working that day. You've got 4 captains. We have 4 fire stations, so you've got 1 captain at each station, 4 engineers, and then 7 firefighters. Our minimum staffing is a 13-man minimum. Usually we have 3 more extra guys than that, but with people that go on vacation or people call in sick, that gives us some flexibility there without having to call in overtime. You know, one of the things that I try to instill on everybody, and I think most people know this, but we're an all-hazards fire department. When people call, it's not always just about a fire. Quite honestly, it's rarely about a fire anymore. Most of our workload is on the EMS side, sick calls, injuries, and so you know, we just don't have that many fires anymore. But another thing that we have to do, we have to be ready for you know, high angle rescue calls, trench rescue, hazardous materials, extrication. It's amazing today the cars that are out there with the different kinds of exotic steels in them. They're so much lighter, but they're also so much stronger. So we went through a transition period about 5 years ago where some of our extrication equipment, and it wasn't just us, it was the industry as a whole, we had trouble cutting into these cars when they would get into wrecks because the steel was just, it was so strong, and it was multi-layered as well. And so luckily we've kind of caught up now, but those are the things you have to try to stay ahead of and at least keep up with. Some of the non-emergency things that keep us busy, you know, just because we don't have an emergency call, that doesn't mean we're at the station sleeping. I know that's kind of a common misconception, but you know, it really goes back. There's so many things that we have to stay on top of now. And one of that is our inspections. I know as business owners, you guys have seen us out there. You know, we're out there quite often. We try to get out to the businesses at least once a year. And that's our pre-fire planning, our fire safety inspections, and then in addition to those, like I talked about earlier, our public education activities. And also we have to test our equipment at a regular basis. So, and then once we get past that, it's train, train, train. Our fire prevention office, I talked a little bit about what our does. That's his name's Jake Papa Giorgio. He's our fire marshal. And he goes out and does most of our inspections for our nursing homes, our hospitals, and any new business that comes in, he's in charge of reviewing the plans and making sure that they have all the proper safety equipment that not only protects us, but also protects the citizens. Special ops, I just talked a lot about that, or a lot about it, so I'm not going to, for the sake of time, I won't go into it anymore. The one thing about special ops is when you first come to work as a firefighter, you don't have that training, and so usually somebody has to be on the department 5 years before we'll even start training them in those special ops because it takes so much money. So we have high angle rescue, swiftwater rescue, trench rescue, hazardous materials. Each one of those is a minimum of 1 week to get to a basic level of training in that particular discipline. So when you look at 6 or 7 disciplines, that's a huge investment for us. You know, it gets into each individual. We're looking at about $80,000 when it's all said and done in just just man hours. And so we want to make sure somebody's going to be here for a while, and we also want to make sure that the guys that are trained in that are our top level guys because it is a substantial investment for us. One of the things and I just skipped over it, I won't go back to it, but we're also heavily involved with agencies, the Texas Task Force 1 and Texas Task Force 2. And these are rescue urban search and rescue agencies that are combined with other departments throughout the country and Texas that will respond anywhere in the nation. And actually, the Texas Task Force One can, at the direction of the president, can go outside the country. So like when you see resources when they were in Puerto Rico or any other major disaster where we send rescue teams out, that's going to be one of those task force teams that I'm talking about. So I really encourage our guys to be a part of that if possible, because not only does it's an opportunity for them to get out, but they bring such knowledge back to us. You know, there's things that we haven't seen or heard of that they're exposed to in those particular circumstances. They're doing invaluable to our community and our fire department. So I support that wholeheartedly. I wish I had the time to still do it. I did it for a few years, and then once I made chief, you just realize you can't do that anymore. So these next few pictures are our current apparatus. I know Summer didn't make it today, but I can't say enough about the support of our city administration, our city council, especially when it comes to our equipment. I am extremely fortunate, and I tell them that all the time, that we have some of the best equipment that's out there, and I truly mean that. And so not only do I think the city staff and city council, but the citizens as well, because it's top of the line equipment, and it means a lot to me. If you'll notice the flag in the grill, that was my patriotic salute. We've got one of our apparatus has the American flag and one has the Texas flag. So I always like to put those in the parades. I just think it's a nice piece. Some of our specialized equipment, that's our hazmat trailer and truck up top, our swiftwater rescue boat on the left, and our utility vehicle, which stays out at the sports park. That helps us kind of access the sports park without having to drive the big apparatus out there. This is an example of some trench rescue training that we were doing. This is confined space. So if you can imagine that victim being somewhere down here, we had to go into a hole about this big around, go down there with our soaks basket, package the patient down there, and then hoist them back up out of that confined space. This is our two guys from our dive team. And actually, Chris McCaslin from PD, every once in a while we'll have to go out to the reservoirs and fish cars out of the lake. Luckily, we haven't had to use them on life safety stuff very much, but probably 2 or 3 times a year we get a car that's either, well, for some reason it's ended up in one of the reservoirs out by the power plant. Let's just say that. Politically correct answer there. So here's some vehicle rescue training. The example we're looking at here is a cement truck that's rolled over onto a passenger car, and so the challenge there is how do we get the passenger out of that completely smashed car? And
Is that real or staged?
no, that's staged. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. You won't see me putting real stuff in here. Okay. Yeah, it's just that's kind of, you can do that in the past, but I'm not going to do that. And we do so much real life training now and realistic training. I don't have to. I just, I get these pictures. It looks real. But it's happened. We've actually had, since I've been here, that's happened twice here. Yeah. Yep. Some of our interaction with the kids. Sorry to go through this quick, but I've already gone past the 10-minute window, I said. This is the HEROES program with the elementary schools. Love that program. Basically, that's just to provide a positive role model. We pass out our HEROES cards, and at the end of the day, the classes basically that collect the most cards, we go have lunch with them over a couple-day period. So it's a really great program through Drug-Free Greenville. I'm not going to go, this talks about how long it takes to be a firefighter. I'm not going to go too much into that.
Are y'all hiring?
Not right now. We don't have any open positions. We only give a test if there is an open position. That saves on money. Really no reason, because the list, once we take it, is only good for a year. And so that's basically why. But as soon as we get an opening, we'll establish another list. So part 2 of why I was here. You saw our 1916 apparatus, and also just recently we've come into possession, on loan by the way, of a 1948 Seagrave pumper that actually replaced the 1916 pumper when it went out of service. So the person that bought this from the city passed away recently, and his son wanted us to have it. Now he asked for some reimbursement, and completely understand that. The city basically told me that I had to go out and find the money on my own. So what I asked the individual was, can I have the apparatus, keep it at my station, and be able to show it to people and try to raise some money? And graciously enough, he accepted that offer. And so you've probably seen it in a couple of the parades. And anyway, that's why I'm here today. I'm trying to raise money to buy that apparatus. I think it'd be awesome to have those two pieces in our possession. And so let's look here. My goal is obviously to raise $8,000 to purchase the Seagrave pumper. It's in wonderful shape. I would love for anybody that is interested to come by Station 3 and look at it. You can also look at the 1916 pumper while you're there as well. And the $5,000 for that is, we did a big restoration on that back in the early 80s, or the fire department did. And it's in need of some other work now. Like you asked if it runs. It runs, but it needs some work done on it. And so I used to drive it in the parade every year. I haven't driven it in the last couple of years because I don't want to mess anything up. I've reached out to the Texas Fire Museum that's in Dallas, and they've agreed to work on it. What they recommend is that we start, it's going to be about $5,000 to start. So that's basically to get over there and fix what they see up front. Luckily enough, I'm at $2,000 on that particular project. So I'm about to take it over there and start. Basically, they'll just tear it down and see what it needs. So this is the picture of the 1948 truck. This is the one that's on loan. It's a beautiful piece. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, if I don't raise the money through private funds, I might end up buying it myself because I'm not going to let it go back. It's too neat to have. But I know it. It's kind of the kiss of death when you do that. But, you know, it's like I told my wife, I said, it's not going anywhere. It's staying in Greenville. And that's what the gentleman wants as well. So this is a picture of it in the Christmas parade. And this is my favorite picture. So we went out to Station 3 and took a picture of both of the apparatus. And on the right, back in 1948, when they did the switchover ceremony, that's what you see there on the right, in the old Station 1. It's the same apparatus.
Fire department was on O'Neill.
Yes, sir, it sure was. Yes, it was. Yeah, most people don't even know that station was over there. You have to look at the old I had to look at the old Sanborn maps to find that. But yes, sir, that's exactly where that was located. So, guys, that was down and dirty and quick. Usually that presentation for me is usually about 2 hours, so it gets a lot more in depth. But anyway, yes.
What can you tell us about the event that took place in Farmersville with a brand new apparatus?
Oh, okay, yeah. Man, I was hoping nobody would bring that up. Good. I just about forgot. I think I forgot about that a couple of days ago, but no, I'm just kidding. I'll never forget about that. So that was actually a brand new fire truck. We'd had it about 2 months, sent it back over for some warranty work. They just got done with the warranty work, and one of their service personnel was delivering it back to us and fell asleep, and the rest is on the news. Yeah. So, you know, extremely fortunate that nobody was really even injured. I think there was somebody had some debris that maybe scratched them. The person that got injured the most was the guy driving the truck, and if you saw the apparatus, I don't know how he lived. But anyway, everybody, the company that we bought the truck from and was servicing the truck really, you know, I think spoke volumes for what they did because, you know, they acknowledged it was a terrible situation. They acknowledged they were wrong, and they did everything in their power to make it right, not only for us, but the other people affected. And in my opinion, that's all you can do. And that's when I look at buying stuff from somebody, things are going to happen. And when you treat somebody right and don't try to deny it, that means a lot to me. So, yes, sir.
Chief, what is your policy with regard to responding to calls outside the city limits?
Okay, we have a mutual aid agreement with all the surrounding county fire departments. So anybody in Hunt County, we have a mutual aid agreement with, and we go if we're called. Now, we also get a stipend of about $26,000 a year from the county that helps to absorb those costs. And that more than absorbs the cost of what it costs us to go out and respond in the county. We just don't go out in the county that much. So does that answer your question? But if they call us, we'll go.
Well, okay, but one of the responses I had earlier on years ago
Uh-huh.
was that the 911 system depended on the source of the call, and if it was outside the county, they would call the neighboring volunteer fire department because that was the location that showed on their computer.
Okay.
If that unit needed help and called Greenville, then Greenville would respond. But the chief at the time said, well, we don't know about the fires until well after somebody else has responded.
So we had an incident, and I don't know, here's where I think you were going with that question. So we actually had a house fire not too many years ago, probably a couple of years ago. It was in the city. They used a cell phone to call 911. The cell phone picked up a tower out in the county, and so that creates, there's two different dispatch centers there. There's a city dispatch center, and then there's a county dispatch center. Well, that call went to the county dispatch center, and there was some confusion there about the address. So what happened was they sent a county unit to a fire in our city, and we didn't even know about it. We didn't know about it really, I'm trying to remember how many minutes it was. I think it took like 9 minutes before we finally got there. And our goal was like 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes at the most. Is that kind of the line of question you were going?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
And that's,
Affects people's insurance and everything else.
well, that's a 911 system, which is ran through the North Central Texas Council of Governments. It's a problem that they're very well aware of, and honestly, there's nothing we can do about it other than what we've tried to do is educate our citizens that make sure when you call 911 that they know that you're in the city limits of Greenville and you're very clear on your address, especially if you're using a cell phone. If you have a landline, it's a completely different ballgame. But if you're using those cell phones, depending on which tower they pick up, it really could affect what fire department you get, for sure. Just one. Yes, sir. Yep. I've got a deputy chief, and then the fire marshal is fire marshal / assistant chief. I'm not really sure why they put assistant chief in there for that, but it's been that way, and it really doesn't affect anything. So just have one deputy chief, though. Yes, sir. Sorry.
8,000 sounds very reasonable for that piece of equipment
Absolutely.
that you're trying to buy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if there's any opportunity for maybe corporate sponsorship, because sometimes putting somebody's name on it or giving some kind of advertisement, even if it's just during a parade or something like that. I don't know if you've thought about how you're going to raise money. It sounds like you just recently came upon that.
Yeah, I've thought about it a little bit. The one thing I don't want to do is I would consider mainly, or I might consider putting something small on there, but at the end of the day, I don't want to take away from the fire truck.
Sure.
I want that to be a Greenville Fire Department fire engine.
Yeah, well,
And
for 8,000, I think it would be short-term sponsorship, maybe at the firehouse or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know.
And I don't guess I would be as opposed to doing something temporary during a parade, like on the back of it,
Yeah.
something like that. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, something like
But I thought about that, setting up a structure where if you gave this much, you might have a permanent plaque on it, but then I just kind of backed away from that. I said, man, I just want that to be, a fire truck, so.
Good job, Jeremy.
Thank you. And if I may, before I lose everybody, I've got some business cards up here. If you're interested in talking about possibly helping me with my little project, my little pet project that I've got, please take a card. I don't mind showing you the apparatus and giving you a hands-on tour of them and talking more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know the feeling, and so do we. That's why Juice takes steps not only to get the lights back on quickly, but to keep them on. We keep the trees trimmed back to avoid outages, long before the storm comes along. We replace poles before they let us down. We upgrade our system to ensure reliability, and all the steps we're taking have led to a nationally recognized award from the American Public Power Association. Juice Electricity. Hometown service, world-class reliability.